After 18 excruciating hours of labor, my husband snatched the birth certificate and declared, "Our baby will have my mother's name." I whispered no, but he sneered, "You don't get a say." The nurse leaned in and asked softly, "Want me to tell her the truth?" My heart raced as everything shifted. After 6 years together and 3 years of marriage, I truly believed Daniel and I had built something real. We lived in Seattle, shared dreams, shared debt, and now, we were sharing the joy of expecting our first child. But that illusion, the carefully curated one I clung to, was about to crack. And when it did, it shattered everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family. Looking back now, I should have seen the warning signs from the very beginning. From the moment I met Daniel's mother, Margot, I knew something was off. She had the kind of smile that never reached her eyes, the kind that always seemed to say, "You're not good enough." Margot was the definition of self-absorbed. Every conversation found a way back to her, her accomplishments, her sacrifices, her son. Especially her son. She treated Daniel like he walked on water, like he could do no wrong, like he belonged to her and no one else. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. The subtle digs, the tight-lipped smiles, the way she clutched Daniel's arm like a prize every time we were in public. Maybe she just had a strong personality. Maybe she was trying to protect him. But over time, it became clear she didn't want to protect him. She wanted to own him. The jabs started small. Passive-aggressive comments about my hair, my clothes, my work. "Oh, Claire, that's such an interesting dress," she'd say, her voice dripping with condescension. Or, "You work in non-profit, right? That's so noble." Daniel's always been drawn to people who need help. At our engagement dinner, when Daniel proposed with a ring he chose himself, something simple, elegant, and completely me, Margot made a scene in front of the entire family. "You should have asked me first," she snapped. "I could have helped you pick something more timeless." I laughed it off. So did Daniel. But that moment lodged itself like a splinter under my skin. When we bought our first home, a small craftsman on the north side of town, Margot walked in and immediately wrinkled her nose. "It's cute," she said flatly. "But why this neighborhood? It's a bit eclectic, don't you think?" She wandered from room to room like a realtor appraising property she'd never buy. The paint color's a bit cold. And who picked out the furniture? The answer, of course, was me. And she knew it. She dropped by unannounced constantly. Sometimes with food, more often with critiques. Once, I found her in our bedroom, rearranging our closet. "Just trying to help Daniel find his favorite shirt," she said, as if her rummaging through our private space was completely normal. I tried to set boundaries. I really did. But every time I voiced a concern, Daniel brushed it off. "She's just like that," he'd say. "She means well. She doesn't know how to show it." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that love came with a bit of baggage, that no family was perfect. But the truth was harder to swallow. Margot didn't mean well. She meant to dominate. And I was just in her way. The dynamic between them was something out of a Victorian novel. She called him Danny, still packed him lunches when we visited her, and clung to him like she was the one married to him. Any attempt I made to bond with her was met with a polite but firm wall. I was not family, I was competition. When I found out I was pregnant, I naively thought it would be a turning point. That maybe, just maybe, the arrival of a grandchild would soften her edges. I pictured baby showers filled with laughter, stories, shared advice. I should have known better. Margot didn't soften, she doubled down. Suddenly she had opinions about everything. The names I liked were too trendy. The nursery theme was juvenile. She insisted I follow the pregnancy diet she swore by from 1986 and lectured me when I didn't. She even tried to dictate which obgyn I saw. Dr. Whitaker delivered Daniel. "She's the best," she said, like my own doctor, who had cared for me for years, wasn't good enough. And Daniel, my Daniel, let her. I told myself it was temporary. That once the baby came, things would settle down. But Margot wasn't interested in settling. She was laying claim. On Daniel. On our child. On our lives. And the worst part? I let her. I used to believe labor would be the hardest part of motherhood. I was wrong. The pain of labor was fierce, yes. My body broke open for 20 straight hours, wave after wave of agony crashing down like a storm at sea. My nails dug into the bed rail, my voice hoarse from screaming, my eyes searching for Daniel's face, for comfort, for strength, for the man I married. But he wasn't there. Not really. Physically, yes. He stood at the corner of the room, scrolling through his phone like he was waiting for an Uber instead of his child. He took 2 calls during my contractions, both from his mother. I could hear her voice faintly on the speaker once, sharp and demanding. Make sure you don't let her change the name. He didn't silence her. He never did. I cried through clenched teeth, sweat pouring down my back, while Daniel left the room to get coffee. Twice. Dr. Harris kept glancing at him, clearly unimpressed. But I stayed silent. I always did. When our daughter was finally born, the room fell quiet. The pain dimmed into the background, replaced by a raw, overwhelming ache in my chest, the kind that only love can cause. I reached out, trembling, to hold her. But I barely had her in my arms for a moment before Daniel stepped in and grabbed the birth certificate papers from the nurse. His voice was cool, almost casual. She'll be named after my mother. Margot deserves that much. At first, I thought it was a joke. A bad one. We'd already chosen a name together, Isla Grace. It was written on the nursery wall. Embroidered on the baby blanket. I whispered, no, we agreed. He didn't even look at me. Just smirked. You don't get a say. My heart froze. My limbs went numb. I was still bleeding. Still broken. Still shaking. And he was standing there, calm, smug, writing a name I never agreed to on the most sacred document I had ever seen. The nurse, her name was Helena, an older woman with tired but sharp eyes, paused. She leaned in close to me, her voice soft like a secret. Want me to tell him the truth? I blinked. My lips parted. What truth? I whispered back. Her gaze flicked to Daniel, then back to me. Something passed in her expression, pity and fire. Not here. But trust me, you need to know. My chest tightened. My breath hitched. I looked back at Daniel, still scribbling away, still playing his role as if this was his show and I was merely the stagehand. That was when something inside me cracked. No, split. I had spent the last 3 years shrinking myself to fit into Daniel's world. Making excuses for him. Letting things go. Trying not to rock the boat. But this wasn't a boat anymore. It was a cage. You're not naming her after your mother, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Daniel looked up, startled. Excuse me? She is our daughter, I said, my throat burning. We agreed on Isla. You don't get to rewrite history because your mother snapped her fingers. His jaw clenched. I had never seen that look in his eyes before. Cold. Cruel. You don't get a say, he repeated. After everything I've done for you, you should be grateful I'm even letting you put your last name on the certificate. I felt like the air had been punched from my lungs. Helena gasped under her breath. Oh hell no, she muttered. Daniel wasn't finished. If you didn't want this, maybe you shouldn't have been so difficult during the pregnancy. You had one job. To carry my baby. Everything else? That's on me. Something inside me shattered. He didn't see me as a partner. Not even as a mother. Just a vessel. Helena didn't hesitate. She snatched the clipboard from Daniel's hands like it burned her. You do not speak to her like that. Daniel turned to her, furious. What the hell? But she cut him off. You're lucky she doesn't know the whole story yet. And just like that, I knew. There was a story. One I hadn't been told. I turned my head slowly, every muscle trembling. What is she talking about? I asked, my voice like glass. Daniel went still. She's lying, he said too fast. She's just trying to stir something up. Helena's voice was low, calm, and terrifyingly certain. You should check the insurance records. My blood turned to ice. I looked at Daniel. His hands twitched. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. What did you do? I whispered. Nothing. He said nothing. And that's when I knew the truth wasn't just ugly. It was unforgivable. The moment the nurse leaned in, her voice soft but urgent, everything around me seemed to still. Want me to tell him the truth, she whispered. At first, I thought I'd misheard. My ears were still ringing from the pain of labor, my limbs trembling, my heart raw and wide open from what Daniel had just done. But then I saw her face, a stern, wise, and holding something I hadn't seen in anyone else that day, a warning. My breath hitched. I turned my head slightly, just enough to meet her gaze, and asked, What do you mean? Her eyes darted toward Daniel, who was still scribbling on the birth certificate form like he was signing a deal with the devil. Not here, she murmured, but trust me, you need to know. A chill rolled down my spine, cold and crawling. My gut twisted as I looked at Daniel, the man I had loved, the man who just told me I didn't have a say in our daughter's name. And now, this? Something inside me cracked. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was maternal fury. Maybe it was the last sliver of naivety dying. But in that instant, I found my voice. You're not naming her after your mother, I said, sharper now, stronger. The tremble in my voice was gone. Daniel's pen stopped. He looked at me like I'd grown another head. Excuse me, he said coldly. I didn't flinch. She is our daughter. We agreed on a name. You don't get to change it behind my back. His face darkened. After everything I've done for you, you should be grateful I'm even letting you put your last name on the certificate. Those words. They hit harder than the contractions. My mouth dropped open. Before I could speak, the nurse gasped beside me, sharp and audible. Daniel wasn't done. You were impossible throughout the pregnancy. Always emotional. Always difficult. You had one job, to carry my child. The rest is up to me. That was it. Something shattered inside me, years of quiet compliance, of letting things slide, of rationalizing his silence. They all rushed to the surface. I wasn't just a woman recovering from birth anymore. I was a mother. A protector. And I wasn't going to let him rewrite the truth. Then the nurse moved. She snatched the clipboard right from Daniel's hands. You will not speak to her like that, she snapped. Daniel's head jerked around. What the hell do you think you're doing? But the nurse wasn't even looking at him anymore. Her sharp eyes were locked onto the form. You're lucky, she muttered. She doesn't know the whole story yet. The air changed. I turned to Daniel. His smirk was gone. His hands had stiffened. His lips parted, as if searching for something to say, but nothing came out. What is she talking about? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it was not weak. Nothing, he said too quickly. She's lying. No, I'm not, the nurse cut in, her tone firm and cutting. Daniel's entire body tensed, his chest rising and falling faster. The nurse leaned close and whispered something that chilled me to my core, you should check the insurance records. At first, I didn't understand. But the moment the meaning landed, it hit me like ice water. Daniel had been the one handling all the paperwork during my pregnancy. I never questioned it. I thought he was taking care of us. My blood ran cold. I turned to him, heart pounding. Daniel, what did you do? His fists clenched. I did what I had to do. The nurse exhaled, shaking her head. I've seen this before. Husbands who handle the insurance, the legal filings, the hospital records. And then the mothers find out they were never listed as a parent at all. My mouth went dry. You didn't. Daniel stood up, like flight might save him. We're leaving. I'm not, I said, my voice like steel. You changed the records, didn't you? You made yourself the only legal guardian. I did what I had to do, he snapped again. The nurse folded her arms. Want me to pull the file? Because I can. Daniel's face turned the color of paper. "You're not doing this," he said, stepping closer, voice lower. "You just gave birth. You're hormonal. You're not thinking straight." But I was. For the first time in months, I saw him clearly. I saw the man who had lied to me, who had let his mother poison our lives, who had stripped me of my rights when I was at my most vulnerable. He reached for my wrist, firm but not violent. Still, it was enough. "You don't control me," I said, yanking my arm free. And in his eyes, for the first time, I saw it. Not frustration. Not even rage. Fear. The nurse turned to me, unwavering. "Do you want to see the records?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." Nurse Helena returned with a folder, thick, heavy, and humming with the weight of what it held. She placed it gently in my lap, like it might break me if she dropped it. Then she opened it. And my world did. There it was, in cold black ink, Daniel Bennett, primary and sole guardian. My name, Claire Bennett, was nowhere on the form. Not as mother. Not as guardian. Not even as emergency contact. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a typo. This was intentional. "You were going to take her from me," I whispered. Daniel didn't deny it. That silence? It was louder than a scream. The nurse's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You're lucky I caught this. I've seen women lose custody over things like this. People think paperwork is just paper until a judge signs off on it." Daniel stood abruptly. "You're blowing this out of proportion." I shook my head, my fingers trembling against the folder. "I'm done." He laughed, a bitter, condescending thing that stung worse than a slap. "What? You think you can just walk out? You just gave birth. Where are you going to go?" Before I could answer, Helena placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "She won't be alone." Daniel's smirk faltered. And that's when I saw it, real fear. Not anger. Not arrogance. Fear. I turned to the nurse. "Can we fix this?" She nodded without hesitation. "Yes. And we'll document everything. If he tries anything again, there will be a legal trail." Daniel stiffened beside the bed, his breath shallow, his fists curling like he still believed he could wrestle back control. His phone buzzed. I barely glanced at the screen until I saw the name. Mom. It all clicked. He hadn't done this alone. Of course not. This wasn't just Daniel's betrayal, this was hers. He declined the call and moved to put the phone away, but something in me surged. I grabbed his wrist, voice trembling but alive with rage. "You're going to tell me the truth." "There's nothing to tell," he mumbled. Helena crossed her arms. "You can either tell her now, or she'll find out when legal reviews the records. Either way, it's over." Daniel's eyes darted from me to the nurse to the baby in my arms. For a second, I saw a flicker of guilt. Maybe even shame. But I didn't care. "I want to hear it from your mouth," I said. He exhaled through his nose, jaw clenching. "Fine. You want the truth?" "My mother told me to do it. She said I needed to make sure the baby was legally under my name only. That way, if you ever tried to leave, you couldn't take her." The air left the room. He continued, bitter, almost defensive. "She said she could get a lawyer. Said the courts wouldn't favor you, you don't make as much money, and if we played it right, I'd get full custody." I stared at him, my voice barely a whisper. "Why?" Daniel rubbed his face, his mouth tight. "Because you never respected my mother." There it was. Not love. Not safety. Not protection. Control. I laughed. Cold. Hollow. "You tried to steal my child because I didn't worship your mother." He didn't respond. That was all the answer I needed. Helena straightened beside me. "We're going to fix this. Now." She took the folder and walked out, probably to get the hospital administrator. Daniel took a step toward me. "Look, this got out of hand. We can fix it." I held our daughter tighter. There is no we anymore. His face twisted. I'm her father. And I'm her mother, I shot back. And unlike you, I won't use her as a weapon. He growled under his breath. You're making a mistake. No, I said. The only mistake I made was trusting you. Right then, the door swung open. And there she was. Margot. Her eyes swept the room, stopping at the shredded paperwork in Helena's hands, then at the phone on the tray, still open to the messages. She froze. Then she smiled. Well, she said coolly. I suppose there's no point in pretending anymore. Sophie, my sister, stood up from the chair in the corner. She'd arrived minutes earlier, took one look at my face, and knew everything. Now she laughed, short and sharp. Are you serious? You're not even going to deny it? Margot tilted her head. Why would I? I did what was best for my family. I stepped in front of the bassinet. The best thing for my daughter is staying as far from you as possible. Margot sighed, patronizing. Claire, be realistic. Daniel makes more money. He has a stable life. You don't. You're emotional. Sophie rolled her eyes. She's emotional because she just gave birth. Not because she's incompetent. Margot turned to Daniel. Handle this. And then I saw it, hesitation. He looked at me. At the baby. He took a step back. I can't. Margot's jaw dropped. Excuse me? I didn't think it would go this far, he whispered. She sneered. After everything I've done for you? But Daniel didn't move. And I knew then he wasn't standing up for me. He wasn't growing a spine. He was just scared. Of me. Of what I was about to do next. And for the first time, he should be. The silence that followed was deafening. Margot's face twisted with rage, her perfectly painted lips pulling back like a mask cracking at the seams. You're going to throw away everything, she hissed at Daniel. Everything we planned. For her. Daniel swallowed hard. I didn't think it would get this far. You coward, she snapped. But her voice was starting to sound small. Distant. Like it was coming from the bottom of a well. I barely heard her anymore. All I could see was my daughter's face, asleep against my chest, her tiny fists curled like a promise. I turned to Daniel, my voice low, but resolute. If you go through with this, if you try to take her from me, I will destroy you. His eyes flicked to mine. Wide. Shaken. You don't. I do, I cut him off. I'll take you to court. I'll show them the false insurance records. The forged documents. The texts. The affair. The way you tried to erase me as her mother. You won't win. Margot barked a laugh. We have lawyers. I turned to her, slowly, steadily. Then I guess we'll see who wins, won't we? For the first time since I met her, Margot had nothing to say. Daniel looked between us, his mother, furious and trembling, and me, calm and immovable. And then he cracked. I can't, he said again. Mom, I can't do this. She reeled back like he'd slapped her. After everything I did for you? And that was it. That was when I knew I'd won. Not because Daniel had suddenly become a better man. Not because he loved me or grew a conscience. But because he was weak. And for the first time in his life, his mother wasn't the one holding the leash. Margot stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Daniel didn't follow her. Sophie immediately called our cousin, an attorney, and had him come to the hospital with the nurse's full documentation. Within hours, we had everything corrected. My name restored. My rights protected. Full custody assigned to me, with every forged attempt logged and notarized. Daniel didn't fight it. Maybe because he couldn't. Maybe because he already knew he'd lost everything that mattered. Or maybe because deep down, he never truly wanted to be a father. Not like that. Not the way Margot wanted him to be. 3 days later, I left the hospital with my daughter in my arms. Daniel didn't come home with us. Margot tried, of course. She showed up at my apartment once, her voice syrupy and false, trying to explain. I didn't let her in. Sophie called the cops. After that, she stopped trying. Daniel moved out within a week. I filed for divorce the following month. And the other woman, the one Margot had been grooming as the real wife? She dumped Daniel the moment she realized he had nothing left to offer. No child. No plan. No legacy. Just a mess of secrets and regrets. It took time for me to feel safe again. To breathe without feeling the ghost of that hospital room clinging to me. I would lie awake at night sometimes, watching my daughter's chest rise and fall, terrified I'd missed something. That somehow, someone would come back to take her. But no one came. Because I had done what needed to be done. I had won. Not in some cheap, vindictive way. Not in a scream down the hallway, flip the table kind of way. I won quietly. By surviving. By staying. By loving my daughter more than I ever feared losing her. And Margot? She lost everything. The family legacy she tried to control, the bloodline she thought she could manipulate, the perfect life she thought she could build through her son's obedience, gone. The woman she never considered worthy of her name now carried her granddaughter in her arms, free and unshakable. As for Daniel, he texts sometimes. Long, rambling apologies. Promises he'll be better. That he wants to be a father. I don't respond. Because now, I know exactly what he is. And I know exactly what I am. I'm not a woman you erase from a birth certificate. I'm not a vessel. I'm not a footnote to his mother's fairy tale. I'm Claire Bennett. I'm a mother. And I'm enough.